Hello and welcome to ANC Decides, the show that gives you up-to-the-minute reports, commentary and analysis building up to the ANC's December elective conference. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabalani. Let's take a quick look at your headlines. ANC succession race is wide open, so Ramaphosa is ahead of Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma with nominations. But 1,200 votes can still change the game. Dispute over Mpumalanga's unity nominations continues. ANC structures call Matthew Phosa's legal action into question. Does Phosa have a strong case? And KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Executive Committee settled disputes ahead of the national conference. PEC says outstanding nominations will have no material impact. The dispute over Matthew Phosa's court challenge to Mpumalanga's unity nominations continues. The ANC says it has not received any correspondence from Phosa about his grievance. Phosa seeks to challenge the disputed unity nominations in court. He says they contravene the ANC's electoral process guidelines. But the party says it has not heard from the presidential candidate. Meanwhile, the Mpumalanga Provincial Executive Committee disputes Phosa's allegation that unity nominations were imposed on branches. The dispute raises questions about the motive to nullify the unity nominations and how this would affect Mpumalanga's delegation to the national conference.
So Matthew Phosa has a fact. If we need to rebuild the organizations and unite, we must start by rooting out the corruptions. And we are fully behind Matthew Phosa in everything that he's doing, because we cannot live in a country whereby there is people who dictate and enslave people by the methodology that they use. So what is happening in Mpumalanga should be rooted out, and it should be dealt with it decisively.
We haven't received any correspondence from Comrade Matthew Phosa about us appearing as a respondent for next week Tuesday. But however, I must express our disappointment. Matthew Phosa is not just an ordinary member of the ANC. He has been the Treasurer General of the ANC, the top 6 of the ANC. So when you talk about exhausting internal mechanism in the African National Congress and not allowing courts to make determinations about what in the ANC internally we can deal with, we quite find it disappointing that a leader of the ANC, not just an ordinary member of the branch, of course he's got rights to express himself in the court of law, but without even exhausting internal mechanism, that issue has not been dealt with internally. PGCs, by the way, they don't elect. PGCs just nominate. It may change the nomination of the branch, but he thinks that there's something else wrong which was done in terms of the ANC processes in the Mpumalanga PGC. I would assume that a disciplined member of the ANC would have considered that issue internally and lodge whatever grievance that was aggrieved by the process internally in the ANC.
Honestly, for me, I've not heard of such, but there are rumors in the corridor saying that this does happen. But when actually it does happen, we're not sure. Whether it's in broad daylight or people are called elsewhere, they are summoned, we're not sure how it happens exactly. But there are rumors that to say that this does happen. In my branch, we were never told what to do. Members went there, they chose unit, and it's what has happened. Unit has prevailed.
My branch vote for unity because the deployee try to explain to why Mpumalanga supported the unity. That's why they convinced that people they support the unity. But as you know, we as MKVA we have our resolution that we support Nkosazana Zuma. This is our resolution from national, from conference, that we support Nkosazana because we know Nkosazana.
Now the ANC succession race is wide open. Provinces have made their nominations, but there's still about 2,000 votes that may swing the results. So Ramaphosa is so far leading the race with 1,860 nominations versus Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma's 1,330. But the 223 disputed unity votes, nominations for other candidates, abstentions and allocation for leagues and PCs may still change the game. This in turn rather exposes ANC delegates to horse trading and intimidation during the last 8 days before the hotly contested elective conference. This raises several questions about whether the ANC can manage this period of vulnerability, which might compromise the elective process. Now, this is how the numbers are stacked up so far. Ramaphosa has 1,860 nominations. That's compared to Dlamini Zuma's 1,330. This excludes the disputed unity nominations, which may go either way. This is out of the total 4,723 branch delegates. The NEC, leagues and PCs have 509 votes. Now, this leaves the remaining votes to make up the total 5,232 open for lobbying.
If there's an issue about unity, that issue will be clarified. When we come at Nazareth, there is no name called unity. Mpumalanga delegates have got to take sides on the issues of unity. What do they mean by unity? They mean Mamunkosazana? Let them do so. They mean Cyril Ramaphosa? Let them decide so. But that issue has been clarified already by Mpumalanga in terms of what objectively they wanted to achieve. It's not like it was malicious on their part to put unity. It was a political objective and a desire to achieve unity in the organization. If you contest the outcomes of the PGC, they're really in the conference of the ANC, they become material, because the outcomes of the PGC at times, given what happens between the PGC and this conference, those decisions may change and the outcomes of the PGC.
We go into conference, and at conference people vote for the leadership. And I'm sure already, even after the nominations, there are very important political discussions which are happening amongst the leadership of the ANC in provinces, in regions, even in branches, crisscrossing each other, engaging about this thing. But ultimately, the National Conference will take a decision about the leadership collective of the ANC. And of course, I think the leadership has explained that there's no such thing as a unity comrade. My hope, and this is our hope as a Free State, that when we arrive at Kalaka, there shall be discussions. People will explain this thing of unity.
Now, today in studio, we're joined by political analyst Tshepo Khadima as well as Kim Hela. And via Skype, we're joined by Professor Andre Duvenaghan. Now, panel, welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Now, perhaps to start with you, Kim, there. I was listening to Zizi Kodwa talking about the outcomes of the PGCs being immaterial. But is that not disingenuous? Because if we had to go by the court, in the Free State, they ruled that there needs to be a rerun of 29 branches, meaning that step is still fundamental. Shouldn't perhaps he be saying the nature of the complaint decides if it's immaterial or material?
Thank you. I think this number game is a very difficult one, and I think we're going to be subject to a lot of surprises as things unfold. And of course, this process is very important, but it's not decisive. And you know, interestingly, if we look back to the US presidential election of last year, the day after, we had newspapers with headlines that were crying out, how could this happen? How could Trump win? And there was a total misinterpretation of numbers and the mood of the electorate. And in a way, I think that's happening right now as we head into the election. And even the numbers, I think, that you showed on screen, I think are a little bit deceptive, because they only take into consideration nomination numbers without any reference to delegate numbers. So perhaps what we all guilty of is creating a picture that is not quite accurate a few days ahead of the election. And things can change quite dramatically from now to then. Some of the factors we're not taking into consideration is this, what we call this unity vote. You know, that was one of the decisive factors that got Trump into power. And yet people said he was numerically incapable of getting into power, but he did. So all these things need to be borne into, you know, taken into our analysis. And we may have the X factor, for instance, of a floor nomination. We may have a lot of the Mpumalanga delegates and other delegates from other provinces that we are regarding as safe and closed up and safe nominations. We may find that actually going towards a very surprise nomination. So anything is possible at this stage.
Now, Tshepo, your take, in as much as we all appreciate that the numbers at this point not really give us a proper picture, but nevertheless, if we had to confine ourselves to the 223 unity votes, I mean, one would say we cannot overemphasize the importance of those numbers, because if we roughly said it's probably 350 delegates out of the 736, so wouldn't that be a substantial number that many still would want to know where are these votes going?
Well, actually, we don't know where any one or even of the nominations, either for Ramaphosa or for NDZ, how the delegates are going to be voting, because they are going to be voting in secret. we must understand that it will appear that there is some, maybe, publicly there might be a fundamental misunderstanding as to what is the purpose of nominations. The purpose of nominations is simply to be able to get a candidate who would have been a hopeful to convert into a candidate, to be on the ballot paper, to be voted in during conference. So what happened is that we had 7 people that were hopefuls. The nomination process was to eliminate and determine as to who actually are candidates based on a minimum threshold. That now it's settled. We only have 2 candidates. We don't have 3, we don't have 4. So the other 5, as some of us have always maintained, that they were in this really for show and entertainment value, nothing else.
Now it brings in another dynamic.
But the nominations really, the job of the nominations and the purpose, it's served. Now you know that I've got 2 candidates for the position of President of the African National Congress because of the minimum threshold. Coming to voting is a completely different factor altogether. And one of those factors is that the membership of the African National Congress generally has now entrusted the delegates to be able to vote and exercise their own discretion, guided by the mandate they've been given by the branch. But the branch has got no way of knowing, or the branch members have got no way of knowing which way a delegate voted, because the vote itself is in secret. And it's my understanding that they will even oppose anyone taking a cell phone into the voting booth to ensure that indeed this is a free and fair, and that the outcome can have integrity. Now, the other thing is that you've got the branches nominating, but also you have to read into, of those nominations, you now have to zero down to the branches. That branch that nominated this or that way, how many delegates is it actually sent into conference? Because you can see there's a clear mismatch. There's a number, because certain branches will be taking 3 or 4 delegates, when certain branches will be taking 1 delegate to conference. So again, the numbers, when they have to come to that, is going to have to be contestation. They have to convince each other of that candidate A or the leadership core in that regard offers the best possible future for the ANC.
If we're playing this speculative game here, because I suppose an analysis at this point is just a speculation game. If we had to play it, of those candidates that you mentioned, the ones that are now out of the race, the 5, they had those that supported them. The big question is, are they going to perhaps throw their lot, the support that they got, perhaps behind NDZ or CR17? If we had to talk about Zweli Mkhize, the few that supported him, where do you think that he
has no control over them, because the vote is in secret?
It is in secret, but nevertheless, if you had to perhaps play the game of speculation to say, if you had to speak to his supporters, where would you see his supporters at least steering towards?
Well, most of the leaders have been silent in terms of pronouncing themselves. So let's say the 5, they now might take this week coming, leading to conference, and say, actually, now that I am out of the race, as I did not garner enough nominations to be a candidate, I am therefore believing that the best person of the 2 is the following, and hopefully that might consider, they might campaign for one or the other candidate, but that's really all that is there. However, at the end of the day, that's now, the coming week is going to be the 2 candidates have to really cast a vision and their understanding of what the ANC is, what the ANC stands for, and how they understand the resolutions or the recommendations, and how they will be implementing those under their leadership. And the delegates will then be left to make a decision as to, of the 2, who is best suited to lead the ANC to effectively implement those policy resolutions that they will be taking at the same conference. And that's what in the next week they have to do that. How well do they understand the ANC, and how equipped are they to implement those policies once they are passed at this coming conference? And that's really what it's going to boil down to.
No, we'll come back to that one. Let's quickly then go back to the Matthew Phosa debacle. Now, this dispute over Matthew Phosa's court challenge to Mpumalanga's unity nominations continues. We're actually joined by our reporter, Natasha Piri, who's out in Mpumalanga. Natasha, warm welcome to you. Natasha, warm welcome to you.
Good evening, rather, to you, Mfundo, and to the viewers at home.
Now,
can you hear me, Mfundo?
I can hear you quite clearly, Natasha. Now, take us through the developments thus far. We were hoping to speak to the spokesperson of the PEC there in Mpumalanga, Mr. Sekani Manzini. Hopefully, we will a bit later on. But what is the official position of the ANC in Mpumalanga following those developments around Matthew Phosa's application in court?
Okay, unfortunately, Mfundo, the sound isn't so great where we are, but just taking you back to the reactions that we got from yesterday, we spoke to a representative from the ANC Women's League, the acting chairperson, Mambusi, and she, of course, condemned the court challenge by presidential candidate Matthew Phosa. And his court challenge is actually seen as a very desperate act, as a form of desperation, of course, as, that they said that, his branch didn't even get a chance to actually sit, let alone reach a benchmark, for a branch sitting where they could actually nominate their preferred presidential candidates. And as for the 408, nominations that he declared, they also refuted that. A national spokesperson of the ANC, Zizit Godwa, also yesterday made mention in reference to this, saying that no presidential candidate can say that a person has 408 nominations, I beg your pardon, actually owns 408 nominations, as delegates can choose the way they want to choose. Taking you back also, Mfundo, to
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Natasha there. Kim, could this court application or court action affect the delegation that Mpumalanga sends?
Well, I hope not, and it should be resolved speedily. And I think it should also be seen for what it is. And that's a management and manipulation of the process. So hopefully those candidates go there. And perhaps that's where the greatest level of uncertainty is, because we don't know what unity stands for. And I'm still contending that that unity vote could be a protest vote. The question is, what are delegates protesting against? Are they protesting against any of the two candidates? Are they perhaps protesting against the decisions made by their own premier? Or are they going to fuel and nominate a totally different candidate? Because we're speaking about this as a race between two. And I think we need to know that the ANC conferences can be totally, any premeditated outcome can be completely dislodged through a floor nomination. And I'm still thinking that's a great possibility.
Tsepo, your take there, do you see this affecting the delegation? Because he seeks to nullify particularly the 233 nominations, meaning whatever the number of delegates that would be, he wants these ones to not proceed to the conference. No,
the 223 branches did not, or the nomination, they didn't dominate. So in fact, the legal effect of it is an abstention. But what was the purpose of that? The purpose was to determine who's going to be a candidate. Matthew Phosa failed to get, even from his home province of Mpumalanga, enough nominations to be on the ballot paper. So already he's fighting a lost cause. The question is that, well, actually what is his chief grievance about the people that abstained?
He said they contravened electoral processes.
Well, there is no electoral process that had been contravened because they abstained. You can have a spoiled ballot paper, yes. And that is certainly maybe a possibility at this coming conference that people might say, listen, I'm voting for two, therefore it becomes a spoiled ballot paper. What are you going to do about it? You can't say, well, how are you going to find those people? The nomination process was nothing other than the purpose was to simply determine who is eligible to be a candidate. That now is settled. Matthew Phosa is not in there. He was a hopeful until the last of the thing. He's no longer a hopeful. He's just like you and I. But the two candidates, really, they're going to have to now do enough to convince the delegates that when they are voting in secret, they will be able to, vote for based on their conviction on who is best suited to be able to lead the ANC. But I can't see how...
Unfortunately, I'll have to interject there. We have to go to KwaZulu-Natal. We'll come back to that thought. Now, the KZN Provincial Executive Committee has made progress in resolving disputes regarding branch nominations. The PEC is convinced the outstanding BGMs will not make a material difference to its delegation. After appeals, overseen by the NEC, at least 12 branches in the province have been allowed to rerun their nominations process. The PEC says it's happy with the branch general meeting progress so far. The PEC further says the outstanding nominations will have no material impact on the delegation the province will send to the national conference. It now remains to be seen if the excluded branches will not challenge the legitimacy of the elective conference.
We have attended to those complaints or appeals was a provincial appeals committee that dealt with a number of appeals. When the National Appeals Committee came in the province, then they proceeded with with the issue of dealing with the appeals. So far, we have rerun about 12 PGMs. There are new decisions of the appeals committee. We'll be rerunning those. We are busy rerunning the PGMs. The deadline is tomorrow, Saturday. So we think we'll be in line with the deadlines of the ANC and the processes of the ANC. No material impact will have. As I'm saying, it's less than 10 branches that will be rerunning. That needs to conclude that process. So according to our plans, we think those branches will be given an opportunity and they will be able to rerun.
We now cross over to our reporter Nomusa Pungula, who's out in Durban. Nomusa, warm welcome to you. Now, it seems that KZN mostly has resolved all disputes, but the Lawrence Dube matter is still one of concern because he claimed that he was barred from attending.
Well, good evening, Fundo, and good evening to our viewers. Indeed, the KZN PEC is confident on how they had handled all the disputes, saying that they handled them with integrity, and they are confident and sure that everything that had to be done for those disputes to be resolved was done in a legal or in those guidelines that are set by the African National Congress. Further on, the Secretary mentioned that they have managed to allow some branches to go for reruns, and those reruns deadline is tomorrow, and they are confident that indeed they will meet the deadline. Now, going back to those that have alleged to be barred from the PGC, the Secretary further explained how processes of the African National Congress work, for the fact that every person or every delegate that gets to attend the PGC are those that have been elected from their BGMs. Those BGMs have to be properly constituted. BGMs that did not qualify or BGMs that did not correct and subsequently did not sit, therefore did not nominate, no one was sent from those delegates. He also further explained that it is important for people to understand that the processes of the African National Congress are things that cannot be spoken about outside the African National Congress. If a person has something that they need to resolve with the ANC, they should come back to the ANC and give their disputes, or allow the ANC to listen to them so that they are able to resolve all the matters that have been put to the table by those people. But also importantly, that those that were not at the PGC, it's not that they were barred, but it's because their branches had not either nominated them or their branches did not sit for PGMs in order for them to be able to nominate them to come and represent them at the PGC. So there are many branches that were falling in that category that did not qualify to have a successful PGM, Fundo.
No, thank you very much. That's our reporter Nomusa Pungula out in Durban. Now, Tepo, there's been this accusation across all 9 provinces from both, I'd say, front-runners' camps, that wherever the PEC, if the PEC perhaps their position is to support NDZ, the Cyril Ramaphosa feel that branches feel that they've been frustrated, they couldn't sit. Similarly, again, where the PEC supports Cyril Ramaphosa, the NDZ campaigners feel that they were frustrated, they couldn't sit.
That is a precursor to the mayhem that is to follow. Next week, when conference starts, you're going to see mayhem in terms of confirmation of credentials of delegates. And that should not surprise us. In fact, in the last, I would say 10 years of the current SG, presiding as the Secretary General, just simple accreditation of delegates at any of the gatherings has always been a nightmare. And this time, because the stakes are high, is going to be mayhem.
Kim, your take, will there be mayhem? Because they seem to have said that at the very least, the first part of those credentials had to be done in the provinces. So they feel that to a certain extent they tried to limit the chaos that we're going to see on day one of the conference.
No, I completely agree with Sepo, and I think we're going to see some serious problems. I think we're going to see some long delays as the credential verification process takes place. But so I think we are expecting some chaos. And in a way, I think also the media and some of the political analysts are causing a little bit of mayhem because we're expecting an outcome that is favoring one of the candidates. And by pushing that narrative and also creating all these narratives of chaos, we may just actually be exaggerating and supersizing that to the point that it becomes a reality on the day. Hopefully in the last few days the SG's office can do whatever needs to be done to make the process as seamless as possible. I'm not sure that that's going to be possible because it looks like this election has been quite poorly managed, which is surprising because it's not as if this is the first ANC election and perhaps it's politics rather than process that is governing. And, I'm always such an advocate of ANC policy and how that should be given pride of place at the conference. And with the mayhem and chaos that we are seeing, I'm afraid that's probably going to be more a sideline issue rather than at the forefront of the ANC conference. And if that happens, I think no one's going to win at the end of the day.
No, the ANC might come out the biggest loser there if at least they go on to display what we've seen thus far. Now back to the swing vote. The ANC succession race is wide open. Provinces have made their nominations, but there's still about 2,000 votes that may swing the results differently. We're joined on the phone line by the provincial spokesperson in Mpumalanga, Ms. Sasekani Manzini. We seem to not have Mr. Sekani Manzini. But on to that swing vote, Tsepo, your take. If they're saying we've got those 2,000 undecided, is it really 2,000 undecided? Or as you say, at this point, we should take that all delegates are undecided?
No, I think delegates are decided. We just don't know which way. Are they open to be persuaded to change? Certainly. What measures have been put into place to ensure that there's no rigging, that there is no inducement of delegates to vote for gain of anything for that matter? Yes, the nomination processes, one of the fundamental flaws with the nomination processes is because they were done by raising of hands, and therefore increasing the risk of people then being backlash or in one way or another being victimized after they express themselves in one way or the other. So only the brave could stand up and say, I'm standing for this candidate or that candidate. But when now they have to go and vote in secret, I think there has to be measures put in place to ensure that that result or the outcome can have the integrity based on truly what is best for the ANC and in terms of the leadership they put in place. So we don't know yet. Right now, I don't think anybody can say the vote will go this way or that way because you just don't know. You'll know the day you know.
Hey, we've got so many questions at this point, but the countdown has begun in earnest, and that's where we leave it today. Until next time.